So, to talk about the buzz on a brass instrument, I think the very first thing we really need to talk about is the breath and how we breathe. There's dozens of resources to use out there right now. Breathing Gym by Sam Palafian and Pat Sheridan is probably going to be one of your best bet. It's very entertaining and very informative, and it's something that kids can relate to. But a lot of the lessons learned in there can be taught in the classroom. We probably all need to understand that in brass playing or wind playing in general, tension is our greatest enemy to great sound and good technique. So what you want to do with the breath is use it as a point of relaxation, not a point of tensing up in a day's worth of playing. And when I work with younger kids, I spend a lot of time just trying to get them to calm down. You know, breaths in playing, 90% of the time in brass playing, are conversational. They're not always your maximum breath. True, there'll be that long note you have to take your full capacity in for, and it's important to know how to do that. But to take a conversational breath is what most of these kids are going to need to do to play most of the phrases that they play. What I mean by conversational is that it's not a breath that's inordinately physical. It's not where they inflate their entire selves up and try and breathe to a point of bursting. It's more of a breath that's natural, similar to that a student might have if they were running outside and were a little bit winded. The body breathes in, it breathes out. It's like a pendulum motion, and there's none of this extraneous tension that goes with it. What I'm talking about is something like that sense of relaxing in the breath. That is priority number one. How that works? Well, we've all talked about in methods courses how the diaphragm contracts, how air is sucked in, how the muscles in the thorax help bring that air in. And we've also talked about when we exhale, the abdominal and lower back muscles assist the diaphragm in its relaxing upward motion and moves the air out. Okay? What I really think young kids need to know is that the breath doesn't need to be huge. It doesn't need to be uncomfortable. It needs to feel comfortable, just a bigger version of their normal breath. So I'll start a lesson on this, just having the student breathe in and out through their nose, finding that regular pace. And this could sometimes take as much as 3 minutes. While you're having the kids do this, you'll probably want to ramble on about other things so you can get their mind off of what breathing is. And eventually you'll notice your class is looking more relaxed. At that time, then you want to say, okay, everybody, let's take in a little bit more air, but just 10%. You know, do it in small increments so you can get them to inflate bigger and bigger in small steps rather than saying, let's go from hardly breathing to maxing out their breath each time. So I would say something like, okay, now that we're all breathing normal, let's take in 10% more. And it might start looking like, and then 10% more, and then 10% more. You notice I'm breathing through my nose. That's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just an inefficient thing in brass playing. And I like to have students, when they're working on breathing like this, to breathe through their nose because it's near impossible to tense up in their throat when they're breathing through their nose. It just doesn't, it's not one of those instinctual things. They'll breathe with an open, relaxed throat like we're always trying to get kids to do generally through their nose. Hardly do I ever see a student goes with their throat doing that humming and buzzing, but I will see this all the time. Okay, and that's why I think when you're working these kinds of exercises at a very young age, get them to breathe through their nose. They'll do it, and get them to inflate to a maximum breath in small steps, and they'll stay relaxed the whole time. And you will have accomplished a huge lesson there because they're learning to breathe without tension. But how can we get them to use their mouth? Well, then it's just simply a matter of telling them, okay, now do the same exact breath, no different, but let's do it through our mouth now. Just some things to be looking out for, and I'll probably talk about this later again, but some things to be looking out for will be that throat noise, that wheezing sound. All that is it's a completely humanistic response to breathing. It's engaging the vocal cords as the air comes in. constricting the throat so that when the air is blowing out, you can then talk. We do this from the first moment we enter the world. So it's not an unhuman thing. You just have to get them to learn how to relax that throat so that they get the efficiency of a quiet breath. I oftentimes will think, if I can't hear my breath is correct. So you might throw that out to your students. I want to hear quiet breaths. Or, better yet, I don't want to hear your breathing at all. I just want to see and hear your breath as it comes through your instrument.